Hello, dear friends. We're talking to the Kabbalist, Dr. Michael Laitman. Hello. Good day. We're celebrating the Day of Jerusalem. For many, it is a political holiday. For others, it is a holiday of the Israeli people, unrelated to the world. For you, what is it? Is it a holiday altogether? Is it a holiday of the Jewish people, a world holiday? For you, what is it? For me personally, I remember how, as a 6-year-old child, more or less, I was brought up by my grandparents. One of my grandfathers was a communist and the other was religious. I was closer to the religious grandfather, and he told me a lot about Israel and Jerusalem. Back then, I didn't understand that much. I was only 6 or 7 years old, I think. So I was 6, 7 years old, and he used to tell me about Jerusalem, about Israel, and so on. Well, of course, as you see, I do remember these things, and when for the very first time I traveled to Jerusalem, after I came to Israel, after I traveled to Jerusalem, I remembered how he used to tell me that you have to go to Jerusalem, that it's on a mountain, and you have to climb there. And then I remembered, back then it was very emotional for me, that my grandfather passed away a long time ago, but he dreamt about this, and it was a dream of generations, and I, his grandchild, am going to Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is a special place. It's a special center of the world, spiritual center. It's something that we're not familiar with yet. It's something that we have to reveal. So you're saying that it has to do with the entire world. There are no Jewish holidays, no such thing. There are holidays of the general system of the upper governance of all nations. So there's no point in saying that it's a Jewish holiday. Now they can invent different holidays like the day of this war, day of that war, things like that. But actually, all those things that are related to what happened here 2,000 years ago, these are all dates and concepts that are eternal, having nothing to do with any specific. What you just said is a revelation for many people that there are no Jewish holidays. These aren't Jewish holidays. These are worldwide holidays that the entire world is celebrating, because Jews are not a people, are not a nation. And all of these dates, they aren't related only to the corporeal, material world, but they're universal. You're saying things that are not clear, that the Jews are not a nation. They're not a nation. They came together in ancient Babylon under the governance, the rulership of Abraham that gathered them from the 70 nations that lived back then and made a single nation out of them. But it's just a group. What unites them? Just one thing: to become like the Creator, to start working on what actually all nations of the world have to come to. But they have to show this to the entire world. It's called being light onto the nations of the world. Well, let's not go there. Light onto the nations of the world irritates everyone. It doesn't matter. This never stopped me. At any meeting, at any gathering, no matter where, I talk about it very calmly, not being ashamed of anything, not feeling proud or anything. It's simply the law of nature that has to be executed. To become light unto the nations is to be superior. It's not to be superior. It's setting an example. And today we're a negative example. We're not carrying out our role. And don't you think that setting an example means to be superior? No, not at all. It's a responsibility, a tremendous responsibility. It's a weight. It means to do it before everyone else and to show on yourself what that is. These are the Jews. Yeah? The point of being a Jew is to show an example of what a corrected humanity is. So for such a Jew that understands that his path is the path of attaining the law of nature, the law of love, Jerusalem for him, what is that? For him, Jerusalem is a certain point in the universe where tremendous spiritual forces are concentrated. I mean, a spiritual point, not a corporeal one. You're not talking about Jerusalem. No, it has nothing to do with geography. Not geography, not the planet, nothing has to do with this. It's just that in our corporeal universe, there are such, not examples, but branches or something that reflects, is a projection of spirituality. But the things are unrelated. This is for Jews, but for the nations of the world. Well, the nations of the world, Jews, they see Jerusalem as the source of religion, of all spirituality for nations. When they travel to Jerusalem, they feel certain feelings. There are even such syndromes. Yeah, the known Jerusalem syndrome. But from the point of view of Kabbalah, it has nothing to do with the corporeal Jerusalem. So what is Jerusalem for the world? What do you mean for the world? For the nations of the world? For the world, I mean, we deviated from this. For people, it is clear what it is. These rocks, they're worthless. I hope that no one is thinking about building the third temple out of stone. Yeah, the rabbi from Lubavitch said so. What do you need it for? You're going to make a museum there. Yeah, but it says that the third temple will be built by the entire world. In the heart. Jerusalem is the heart, meaning the concentration of all human desires, yearnings. And inside these desires, the temple will be built, attained, meaning such a state of the desire where everything is built on mutual love, and then in this mutual love, there will be built the greatest force of mutual love called the Creator. We will make it. Meaning for all those who yearn to come to that state, Jerusalem is the uppermost point. Yes. And the day of Jerusalem is the day of the building of the temple, right? No, what we consider as Jerusalem, it's unrelated to spirituality. It's freeing Jerusalem during the 67 war. So, it's not, it doesn't say anything. Okay, let's go. I want to ask about suffering. We talked a lot about politics. Now the time has come to suffer. Okay. That's related to, what famous people say about this. In general, it's not a secret that the world's now really suffering. After the virus, the time now, suffering became a very common word. I think that it's not suffering that much as it is starting to understand that its state is one of suffering. Yeah, it's a state of suffering. The world feels that it's suffering, but actually there's nothing to suffer from. If you look at the world, actually, 8 billion people that exist somehow, that there isn't really what to suffer from. People live, go to restaurants, friends, fly around, go to the beach. There's not that much to suffer from. Meaning there's some kind of inner yearning, some kind of inner unclear, something unclear, right? And the main thing's missing. And therefore, running around here, there, traveling, going abroad, big TV screens, everything. It's in order to clog yourself. So I have a few quotes about suffering by famous people, and if you can explain. An ancient philosopher said, even though that I feel bad, this isn't a reason to cause others to suffer. Yeah, well put. Meaning, an ordinary person feels bad. When he feels bad, when he sees that others feel bad, it calms him down a bit. A sorrow shared is a sorrow halved. When I suffer, I want for others to know about it. I show it. I think that maybe this will decrease the suffering. Or I close myself someplace. There are several types of people. What to pass the suffering on to others, to hide it? What are you supposed to do with it? I think that it's preferable not to pass on to other people these negative feelings, but because it's you have to try and make it so that you act out toward other people that, that you feel good things, and then you'll come out of it quickly. This is an advice of how to come out of the suffering. Right? Why? Because when you will show others that you're in a good mood, you'll acquire it yourself. You'll get into it. Yosef come out of your suffering and go into a good kind of mood in order to pass it on to others. This is actually very interesting. Can a suffering person do that actually? Actually, people do that sometimes. Parents with their children, relatives. There are many such cases. And a Kabbalist, when he suffers, he laughs at himself, actually. Actually laughs at himself because there are no reasons for suffering at all, besides our small, petty egoism. So he laughs at his own ego. Yeah, if you laugh at it, then you'll be able to get out of it quickly. I saw this on my teacher, and this was really an amazing example of how a person can rise above the suffering. But the suffering itself is felt at that moment. Of course, he can't get rid of it. He can only try and rise above it. And according to the wisdom of Kabbalah, it is actually forbidden to destroy the suffering, to erase their source, but actually to rise above it. So there is suffering and the rising above it. Yes, and then you start feeling in the difference, the gap between them, the greatness of the Creator. And the gap in the difference. Yes. And then in the gap between them, you start feeling the greatness of the Creator. Saadi, it's a Persian poet, Sufi by the way. He says that if you're indifferent toward the suffering of others, you're not worthy of being called a human being. Yeah? And he said that if the suffering of others will not force you to suffer, then maybe you shouldn't be called a human being, meaning you're not a human being if you don't feel the suffering of others. Yeah? You can call a human being those that can sympathize with others. Why? Because then he has an awakening toward connection with others, and the correct connection with others, sympathizing with them, good relationships, and so on. In that, a person builds his matrix called Adam, a human being. Meaning he feels consciously or unconsciously that he is connected with that other person, that he depends on the other, and therefore the suffering of another is important to him. Yes? This depends on his degree. What kind of awakenings does he have? If he feels that he depends on another, then is it the dependence that forces him to sympathize? Then it's egoistic, an egoistic kind of suffering. For a Kabbalist, what does it mean to sympathize with another? For a Kabbalist, it means to elevate another from the state of suffering, not to leave them there, not even for a moment. Meaning by this, I elevate the other. Yeah. Once I see another suffering, I have to immediately, by all means, to show him, to try to elevate him. And what does that do? That by this I show him that I'm with him, and gradually I start elevating him from there. What does it do? In the world there is no suffering. There is no suffering in the world. And so there has to only be the effort, the attempt, or such an action where you go into the state of the other and start elevating him with you. So you are above the suffering person at that moment, yeah, on purpose. You make the same degree out of yourself like he's on and start elevating him. My question is, how do you elevate him? What do you tell him? What do you do for it? Well, it depends on what state is he in. What does he feel? What is he experiencing? But actually what I have to tell him is that I have to pass on to him the globality of the world, of humanity, the globality and eternity of our existence. That actually there's nothing bad in the world, in nature, no matter what happens with our body, with those that are close to us, no matter what kind of difficulties we can imagine, what problems. It is all a part of, it's all something that our body that is destined to die anyway, that what it is experiencing, but the soul is undergoing constant elevations, and we have to think about it. The entire question is how to pass that on to the suffering person. Can he hear it or not? Well, it's work. It happens gradually, but it has to be done, this work. Yes. Well, this is the kind of work that we do in the tens and small groups. And still everything's ahead. And when it says that a Kabbalist feels the suffering of the entire world, what does it actually mean? The suffering of the entire world is because they're still very far from starting to ascend in becoming like the Creator. That there is such a wondrous opportunity of everyone starting to ascend together, helping each other, so there will be no difficulty in being in constant ascent and revelation of the Creator, meaning in eternity and wholeness and perfection, and we don't use it. Shakespeare said, a miserable, dying, suffering bug suffers just as a giant, as a dying giant. Well, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that a bug feels its life and death to the same extent as does a human being. And there's a tremendous difference even among people, more primitive, more developed, those that are more subtle, those that are more simple. There is a difference. It all depends on the inner evolvement of a person. So I disagree with Shakespeare. So it depends on a person's evolvement, meaning a small bug doesn't feel its life, another animals feel more and more and more, up to a human being that feels a sense of self. And okay, is it possible to sympathize with an animal, with some bug? Is it possible to reach such a state where a person will be able to sympathize? Well, a person does, because he has the ability to, as if clothe in that animal, to sympathize with it. But this is for human beings. Animals don't have that, and people do. An animal, if it is emotionally tied to a person, then it feels that person. Lately, many people are depressed. Yeah, very widespread. All those that are around people, they take on their qualities. So an animal suffers. Yeah, we see it on dogs, cats that live with people. Obviously, even wild animals that are tamed, they feel it too. They feel the situation of the person working with them, or a domestic animal. All those that have to do, that are related to people, they feel our qualities, they feel our forces. Furthermore, they feel our illnesses. They can determine whether a person is healthy or ill according to what he internally feels. So, an animal that is depressed, it was infected by us. So we have to cure ourselves, and then animals will start being happy again. Of course. It's like a dog that comes to the grave of their owner and lays there and everything. This is their place. Jonathan Swift said that all the joys, in return for all the joys we get, all the suffering, it's like spending prematurely what you've accumulated, meaning that the suffering comes as a result of our joys, and so on. Well, from the point of view of Kabbalah, it's not really so. Because if a person's born against his own will, not choosing his family, not choosing anything, and gets an excellent upbringing, receiving all that he needs because this is how his family is, you can't demand anything of him. This is how he was made, according to a higher thought. He has no freedom. Of course not. So he's not accounted for that. But after a person already has a very clearly determined opportunity, not that he's just, but a clearly determined opportunity to start building himself, remaking himself, for that he's accounted. But also only to the measure to which this opportunity was actually given to him. So it's natural to agree that you had fun, you had a good time, and suffering comes as a punishment, and you're saying no. No, it's a religious worldview. It's unfounded, because what people know, why were they made the way that they were in the circumstances that they had, and when does their freedom of choice appear? These are non-simple matters. So you actually even justify this a bit, that there is no freedom of choice. Of course, all people in our world, from rich to poor, from healthy to ill, you name it, the way they are is the way they are. You can't hold them accountable for anything. Then how do we judge people? This is exactly how you do it. With your courts, you invented them and you judge people. Yeah? How can you judge people? For what? What I have from the Creator. That this is the way that He created me, and from my parents that were created by the Creator, for them to influence me the way that they did. So, in me there is this point of freedom that I can use out of where I can grow myself if I know what and how that is. So what do? Nothing? Nothing. This is why it said, all are deemed as beasts. In the world, there are no human beings. This needs clarification. You can't leave that just so in the air. I understand, but people immediately start commenting. Let them. Just like animals comment other animals. What does a person have that is not given to him by nature, and how can he then change himself? If I have to change myself, then I need some kind of... How can I do it? Therefore, in our world, it says so. In Hebrew, it says, Kulam kebemot nidmu, meaning all are deemed as beasts. What kind of freedom of choice does a person have? A person has no freedom of choice. Free choice. We talked about this a lot. We did, but now we're trying to explain this to people. A person has no free choice. Can you show me some free action that a person does, some free desire, some free thought that he'd get not from someone or something, but that it somehow appeared out of nowhere? No such thing. Therefore, a person is not free. It's good. Why not? Well, you're in contradiction with the world that people are, they think they have my own idea. Simeon, let people say whatever they want to. Let philosophers argue about this. There is nothing in a person that doesn't come from nature, from others, from someplace. A person has no freedom. The freedom in a person exists once he gets an additional force that is in contradiction with the corporeal force, and only in the gap between these two forces can a person become independent of these two forces and then have free choice. So a person, he is completely motivated by his ego until there's some kind of, miracle, turning point. It is a miracle. And he asks for a different force to appear in him that will, as if get him out of this. He starts feeling free, right? That's how it is according to the wisdom of Kabbalah. A person starts feeling that he's not free, then he starts feeling that he's not free. He attains his lack of freedom. Can you explain this to a simple person, do you think? Baal Sulam, he has this article. He wrote an article, very clear, but is it possible for an ordinary person who thinks that he is free?
No,
actually, it's necessary. You have to explain this. Yeah, because through the understanding of that, he will understand that there is nothing and no one achieving nothing in his life, and therefore there is no reward or punishment for it. Maybe somehow he will feel more pleasant. I don't think so. But there's no punishment there. Well, there's something else. There is something about it. But on the other hand, there's nothing altogether. So am I alive or not? No, I don't exist. I do not exist. Therefore, this world of ours that we exist in, emotionally, with our senses, from the point of view of Kabbalah, does not exist. Therefore, it's called the imaginary world. In Hebrew, Ha'olam Amedumeh. Because there's only one force in it that operates everything. Yeah, therefore we don't even exist in it. But it's good.
Здесь же такие прошло как сон.
Да.
Ну и хорошо.
You know, it's like a dream. We were dreamers. Yeah, it says that life is only a moment between the past and the future, and it is actually called life. There's this song. But it doesn't exist either. No. Give a person something who's lost. Lost. Die. I'm lost. I mean, you're not a human being. You're not free. You're an animal. This world is imaginary and so on. I heard this. You heard it. Now, read everything that I wrote about this. Read everything I wrote about it. It's not mine. Meaning, at first I resisted. I write terrible comments. I condemn you. Yeah, there are many such. Lately, people are flooding us with this. What do you want from me? I brought them the coronavirus. No, not because of that, but actually because by this you force a person to work. What can I do? This the thing. Otherwise, it's to simply tell a person about, the damn billionaires, that they're to blame or something. There a person can agree. But suddenly you're telling a person that he has to work. From this state of absence of freedom, you have to come to a state of freedom. People are fighting the desire to chip people. A person says, what? How come I'm free? Free how? You're not free in anything. You can measure me any way you want. Okay, we're not going there. We talked about this, but still, to explain to a person that he's not free. Yes, to explain from the point of view of nature, we're not free. If we were created by nature, what is there about us that was not created? What is your freedom in then? Meaning, I'm created by nature, and nature's leading me from beginning to end, absolutely in everything. And my thoughts, and furthermore, with the illusion of freedom. This is exactly it, that it gives me the illusion of freedom. On purpose, for you to feel that you're a human being. Yeah, that I create, I make, analyze, rule. I'm a judge, by the way, I judge people. And add to that, as a builder of communism, of course, of the better future. A lot depends on me. I can give, and everyone looks at that person. By the way, they follow him, people follow him, they say that he's powerful. we should follow him. Well, it's all empty. Why explain this all for? Well, you said that we should explain it, or to explain that there's no freedom, this is possible. Balasulam writes about this, and it's all explained. To explain how to achieve freedom, it's by drawing upon yourself a second force. Now, you need the second force, which is its opposite, and it's not free either. But in between these two forces exists the state of freedom, the so-called middle half of Tiferet. Okay, so let's summarize. Can you give me several points for a person to be able to advance toward freedom? First point is what? To understand that he's not free. If he has this kind of demand, only if he has a demand for the meaning of life, because the meaning of life is attained only in the search of independence, in the ability to be independent, to find a sense of self, and not in becoming like others in terms of who's richer, who's this, who's that. Don't take any kind of example from others. He does this and that, and I too. And people will look at me like they look at them with respect. They'll carry me on their arms, praise me. I don't need all that. What I need is my I, which is completely different than of that rich or poor, or doesn't matter who and where or what. The main thing is for me to find myself. And this is where a person's search begins. Where's my I, my sense of self? There, he starts searching, he comes down to understanding that he's not free. This takes time, but eventually, yes. And that he has to... What? Because he understands that he is not free, he starts searching. He understands that his freedom is in rising above his ego. And even though that a person cannot get rid of this ego, but would want to, and when he wants to but can't, he finds the opportunity of how to draw upon himself a force that even against his efforts to remain in his ego, leave him in this ego. I don't want to come out of this ego, but I make it so that it draws me, the faith above reason draws me out of this. Another turn. Only turning points. But it's wonderful. Meaning I reach a state where I don't want to come out of my ego. Of course I don't want to. No one does. No one. And on all of these spiritual degrees, no one wants them. Willing to kill everyone, do you name it what, hate your teacher. You have no idea what happens. And still is being dragged out. Why this state? He was going toward it for so long. But what did he understand? Now that it is revealed how he's entirely inside his ego, he simply can't. How can he part with it? I think that it's all torments of coming out of Egypt. It's called crossing the Red Sea. And how does that happen? I don't want to, but still it happens. It happens because you are making such unwise actions, and they draw you out. And then I don't want to, but already too late.
Поехали дальше. Ну, давайте еще одну цитату все-таки разберем, а потом, если успеем, я все-таки хотел спросить одну вещь. Вот пишет Рабиндранат Тагор.
Rabindranath Tagore writes, the main thing that teaches a person about life, it's not that there is suffering in the world, but that it depends on him whether he will invert the suffering into joy. No? Well, this is how this is according to Hindu philosophies. Suffering turns into joy, it's true, but not in that key. It's only through the upper force that allows me to use the ego for bestowal in order to rise above it. Yeah. And for them, it's within the framework of this world. Yeah, I have to make it by my efforts and everything will be fine. Okay, I wanted to ask about one more thing. We have 3 minutes left. Wherever you look, newspapers, internet, they're all the time talking about, conspiracies, like with the corona, with the mass media that is now pushing this conspiracy by world leaders to have less, to decrease the world population, Chinese conspiracies, For a person, it's natural to feel that there's some kind of conspiracy. He falls into it, starts playing. I see even our students suddenly start. Why is it so? Why is it so natural? Why is it happening now? Well, the thing is that, first of all, it interests a person. These are against those are against these, behind their backs doing that. What can you do? Yeah, that the world is controlled by certain people that do one thing or another. Yeah, these conspiracy theories, they're as ancient as mankind is. And of course, it all turns against Jews eventually, that the Corona came from them. No problem. But what kind of period is this that everyone's in this state now? Because it is unclear to people the way that they exist, and they do not understand who's controlling them, what is controlling them. What can control them? How can a person control himself? If you have at least 1,000 years ahead, then you can somehow rule the world. But otherwise, what do you rule? Today you're here and tomorrow. So it's not really clear. A person feels that he can't rule the world. Is what you're saying? That he himself can't control? Of course, no one can control the world. It's all child's play. No, I feel that many are controlling me, and I don't want for anyone to control me. You can't escape that either. Of course they control you. And above everything, the Creator controls everything. This a person doesn't understand. He doesn't. Because there's a general system, and it's headed toward some kind of sum total, and this is how everything works. And the reason that we want to pinpoint it at something, it's because we don't see where is it coming from. What really has to be our participation? Our participation in everything surrounding us has to be in finding the plan of creation, its program, and the measure to which mankind is a part of it. This is the wisdom of Kabbalah. It talks about this. And everything else, I don't know. I'm telling you seriously. I can't imagine when you're telling, but you have such a this and that. I don't know. And where is it accumulated? I don't know. It's our clips, millions of people watch our clips. We didn't have these amounts of people before, viewers. So it's excellent. People can't relate to this in any other way. This is what's good. When you really grind it, this is what people learn from. So you think that it's correct, that this is a natural perception of course, if to the last person would really condemn me, that he said this there and that here. That they know where I said what. That's amazing. You're all the time coming to the conclusion, and this of course, but a person is pushing away this conclusion and takes different approaches, the in-between, but the conclusion, probably it hit him if he resists it so much. Obviously. But the main thing is that he wants to catch me, so he has certain thoughts, this, that. Yeah, but he watched till the end. That's what's interesting. Very good. So, is there a conspiracy against mankind, something? Of course. What? It's the method of our development. The Creator, He stands behind all of this, churning everything. He's the one controlling all of it. So, in that you see the Creator. There is no other force, only the Creator. He created us. Opposite to Him, and He is playing with us. So this is exactly a conspiracy against mankind as it is right now. Right. And it all happens by as one force, thought, and therefore we can be glad that we're advancing. And this is the only thing that there is. Yeah, everything else simply doesn't exist. Because everything is under His power, plan, control. No one's free. No person has freedom of choice. So what can he do? Suppose now he's deciding that he's going to kill someone. It's not he decided, or to act one way or another. It's not that a person decides. There's nothing free. Therefore, there's no man. It's all what we call machshevet abriya in Hebrew, the thought of creation. The thought of creation. This is what is implemented in all of us. What does the Creator want as a result? For us to understand how we have no freedom of will, how controlled we really are, and how free can we be, to the measure that we are like the Creator. To be like the Creator means what? It means to acquire the quality of bestowal, love, and connection. Thank you.